Now, if anybody wants to see a punting clinic, go back to the 2018 Michigan State game. Drew Chrisman backing up the Spartans inside the 5-yard line time and time again. The Ohio State defense clamping down and turning a 6-6 game into a 26-6 rout, basically because Drew Chrisman kept Michigan State inside its 5-yard line like 4 or 5 times in the second half of that game. And he's been one of the exceptional punters in the nation the last 2 years. And Blake Hobile, 23 for 28 during his career. So that seems to be pretty well clamped down coming into 2019, Pat.
For sure. Those are the two guys when it comes to the kicking game. Like you meant, Ohio State continues to find these punters that can place the ball. And it's really been a big part of their success these last few years. And, not something you talk about a ton with the punter, but it's a crucial part of the game. And, Jim Tressel recognized that. Urban Meyer recognized that. Ryan Day, certainly the same. So, they value the punter, even if, that's not a sexy position, so to speak. And then the kicking game is always obviously important. You get in those close games at the end of the year, the big time games, you're going to need to hit field goals and sometimes long field goals. And Blake Hobbill showed last year he can do that against Northwestern. I want to say it was a 54-yard field goal or something, roughly around there, that he hit right before halftime, and was essentially carried off the field by his teammates as a walk-off halftime kick in a game that Ohio State was comfortably in the lead, but just shows his range. He's been very solid for them. If you're an Ohio State fan, you don't like to see either of those guys on the field that often, because that means you're either not scoring touchdowns or punting the ball back to the other team. But, there's, like I said, there's going to be situations where both of them become important. And fortunately for Ohio State, they've got two good ones in the kicking game.
And yes, Ohio State fans, there will be close games at some point. Those didn't come last year. Penn State was the closest. They got within, 21-17, and then it was an 11-point game. That was pretty much the nail-biter for the Buckeyes last year. And then, of course, Wisconsin jumped up 21-7 before the Buckeyes just completely blew them out in the second half. What would that be, like 27-0?
Yeah, in
the second half to take that game out before the college football playoff game. So I'm going to answer my last question, Pat, as I'm asking the question, because it seems to be pretty obvious that anything less than a Big Ten championship and a college football playoff appearance is a disappointment for 2020. So that seems to be the bar. That's where the program is. So they almost have to win a national championship for it to be truly a successful season.
I think you're exactly right. The expectations are so high at Ohio State, and it's true every year. But you're coming off a third straight Big Ten title, to return to the college football playoff, where you lose a close game, and obviously there's arguments about why that game went that way with the officiating and whatnot. But you're in that game against Clemson. You come one throw that there was miscommunication on from winning the game, going on to play LSU in the national title. So with the amount of players that we've detailed that are returning, the coaching staff the way it is, it's got to be that the expectations are to win the Big Ten for a fourth straight year and get back to the playoff. And this time, compete for a national title. I think anything else, like you said, would be a letdown. Now, it's not going to be easy for Ohio State. They have a trip to Oregon the second weekend of the season. That game, obviously, with everything that's happened with the coronavirus, we'll see what happens in terms of fans in the stands and how that all works. But, a trip to the West Coast is never going to be easy. Oregon does have some reshuffling to do and with their roster, but that's certainly not a one you just mark down with an easy W. You've got Penn State at the end of October. You've got to go to State College. Again, we don't know what it's going to be like with fans in the stands or limited capacity, so that atmosphere may not be as crazy as it normally is with the whiteouts and whatnot. But this is a very good Penn State team, probably the number 2 team in the Big Ten heading into the year. Going to their place is always going to be tough. The game against Michigan at the end of the season, it's in Columbus this year, but we all know what that game is. And then you've got to always, be aware of potential trap games. Iowa is one that tripped Ohio State up a couple of years ago. They come to Columbus this year in early October. Nebraska, Michigan State, both teams who have given Ohio State trouble in the past. Is a trip to Maryland rebuilding Maryland team, maybe trickier than it has been in previous years for Ohio State. I think for the most part, the schedule shapes up pretty nicely, but you've got to navigate it. And Ohio State did a great job last year of going undefeated through the regular season and winning the Big Ten. But there haven't been that many seasons where Ohio State in its long history has had an undefeated season, and that's because it's not easy to do. But this is about as talented of a team as we've seen in a long time. And they like I said, the expectations are win every game and bring home a national championship.
Maybe Penn State will paint the stadium white, the bleachers, the cement, everything, just to create the whiteout with who knows how many fans, 0, right. 20,000, 50,000, whatever is being the determination. I think Gene Smith had mentioned 20 to 50,000 at Ohio Stadium at one point.
Yeah, they're hopeful that they can, get anywhere between those numbers, 20 to 50,000, at a 100,000 seat stadium like Ohio Stadium. The idea is you can still socially distance and do all the things that you need to do to be safe, while still having a good amount of fans in the stadium. And it's not so much once you're sitting, but out in the concourse and waiting in lines and things like that, where the social distance stuff really comes into play, in confined spaces like that. But I mean, here we sit in mid-June. We think about where we were a couple months ago, and the fact that we're talking about fans at all is steps towards progress, I think. What'll be interesting is to see where we are come August and obviously September when these games start, and where kind of the health situation is. I think that it'll probably change what we think about everything by then, the more we learn about the virus and whatnot. So we'll see. I think it's too soon to say what the stadiums are going to look like, which is unfortunate. I know that everyone wants to know, are you going to be able to attend games? Are you going to do this? It's just kind of a wait and see thing that we're gonna have to deal with here going forward the rest of the summer.
Because don't you think this would be the sport that would be the most adversely affected by no fans at the games? It's just college football. We're watching golf over the weekend. Big deal. It's the same setting on TV. And for you guys as media at the game in the press box, no band, no cheerleaders, no crowd noise, no nothing. It would just be completely odd for this sport, for any sport. But I think college football's on the top rung when it comes to just fan and atmosphere engagement, just the setting and the atmosphere involving beyond what's going on the field between the white lines.
I absolutely agree. I think it's almost eerie to think what a big time college football game, be it Ohio State, Penn State, Ohio State, Oregon, the games in any of those big marquee games, that come on ESPN at 8 p.m. or whatnot. Just to think of that, trying to set up this big deal and there's no noise, there's no fan. It's hard to imagine. And what about college game day? They travel around the country and you do that without fans there all of a sudden. It's weird to think about, and something that obviously people above my pay grade are going to have to figure out. But I hope that there's a way to sort out having some kind of atmosphere at these games, because it will definitely have a different feel if they're not.
Yeah, and how to produce the games on TV, because instead of all the crowd shots and the interesting shots of the atmosphere, I guess we'll get 18 different angles of the off tackle run for 3 yards is what we're going to have to watch, but that's fine. All right, Pat Murphy on the line from Bucknuts, helping us out, breaking down the Ohio State roster, offense and defense. Pat, we appreciate you just setting us up for 2020 here.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.